Cloud is in Super Smash Bros. Let me repeat that because it sounds so unreal. Cloud is in Super Smash Bros. Something everybody merely joked about for years actually came true, and we couldn't be more excited. But you know Sakurai. This reveal trailer is stuffed with secrets and hidden details, but we haven't even begun to hit our limit, and the old analysis machine won't break from this. So let's take a closer look at what Cloud is bringing to Super Smash Bros. Right off the bat, we can see that Cloud will maintain his classic look. He has the Buster Sword in hand and is even wearing the classic soldier uniform. And considering that his default stance is exactly the same as his ready stance from Final Fantasy VII's battles, it's almost as if he was ripped from a high-definition version of the game. In the same way that Mega Man's movements matches the classic games, so too does Cloud's, and this becomes especially clear as we look at his moveset. But the trailer also revealed another of Cloud's costume options, the outfit that he wore for the Advent Children movie. Even his hairstyle changes from the more traditional spiky look to the one from the movie. In addition, the Buster Sword is swapped for the Fusion Swords, though understandably they won't be able to be separated into their 6 individual pieces when using the costume. Based on these two outfits, we suspect that each one will have 4 variations, though what those colors will be based on, we're not sure. Inspiration could come from the different materia colors, or the primary colors of his allies, or maybe even a few that make him reminiscent of Zack or Sephiroth. There are a lot of options that Sakurai could play with. We get a look at all 3 of Cloud's taunts in the trailer as well. The first is a recreation of his victory animation. He twirls the Buster Sword in front of him before placing it on his back. It's a classic maneuver, though this scene makes us curious about something else entirely. During his introduction, Cloud says a few lines of new dialogue thanks to his Japanese voice actor. So when he's released, will he only speak in Japanese, or will his English actor Steve Burton be brought in for new lines? Or will they simply pull his dialogue from other sources? If we had to guess, it'll probably be the last option. Though interestingly, the voice actor for the Smash announcer, Xander Mobus, confirmed on Twitter that he had no idea that Cloud would be revealed. So it seems that the new dialogue hasn't been recorded yet. It's possible that Steve Burton could be brought in to record a few lines as well, but again, we mostly think they'll just use voice clips. The next taunt looks to place him in a nonchalant pose that shows off his attitude and general moodiness during Final Fantasy VII. Not too much to say there, but Cloud's final taunt showcases him in his spellcasting animation, which is pretty cool. There's even a small joke where it makes it look like he's casting Toad on the Prince of Sable. Impressively, we get a pretty good look at almost all of Cloud's movement and animation. When dashing, Cloud always seems to glide above the ground, which we get a small taste of here when he transitions directly into an attack, and again here when he merely performs a jump. However, his jump does kick off from the ground and not just randomly off of the air. In fact, his double jump is mildly impressive from an animation standpoint. He reaches around with his free hand to steady his sword while twirling around and even smoothly moves it to best steady the massive blade. He maintains this grip until he's back on the ground. The animators actually went through the trouble of figuring out how Cloud can be so mobile with the Buster Sword while still emphasizing his strength. Another scene also shows off Cloud's 2 different idle animations. One has him preparing his sword vertically in front of him, while the other shows him doing the same except with a horizontal stance. But there's still his actual moveset to break down, and to keep things simple, we'll cover each move in the order that they appear in the trailer. The first move we see from him is the Braver Limit Break, which we believe will be his side special. You can even see how a white glow appears around him right before the scene fades. Interestingly, he doesn't jump into the attack since we pointed out the actual animation of that earlier. Instead, Braver naturally has him leap into the air to bring the sword down in one massive strike. It also differentiates itself from a normal jump by having either white feathers or dust appear below Cloud. We do get to see the full effects of Braver soon enough though, as Cloud uses it to strike Mario in the air. And it seems to have a Meteor Smash quality to it when connecting in midair, since Mario is slammed down hard and launched upward. This is also the first time we see that the Buster Sword will fittingly emit a green Mako glow with each swing, as we see with Cloud's up tilt to hit Sonic. Cloud then performs a ground dodge to avoid Ryu, before jumping into the air and using his back aerial. The next scene shows Cloud's standing A combo, which are 2 kicks followed by a sword swing. Then he performs a forward tilt on Pit before we see what we believe to be his unusual down tilt. This takes the form of a slide kick that both dodges Samus's missile and knocks her away. He capitalizes on this with his up air attack. When he's fighting against Pac-Man, Cloud performs his backwards jump and then a down aerial, which, like Braver, acts as a meteor smash. Another scene shows Cloud facing off against Shulk. Here he uses his up smash, which is marked by the sparkle around him before he strikes. Next is a fight against Little Mac, where he shows off his forward dodge and down smash, which jams the Buster Sword's hilt forward and then the blade behind him, much like how every other down smash covers both sides of the character. His forward smash is a little different because instead of one big hit, it's a series of smaller strikes. And as we see with Robin, the only attack that has launching power is the final one. It's possible that opponents can minimize the damage if Cloud is too far away. The trailer then shows just how much range Cloud has. When performing his forward air, it not only hits in front of and below him, but slightly behind as well, which is just enough to hit Mega Man. He then transitions into a dash attack where he forces the blunt edge of the Buster Sword into his opponent. Then we see his back throw when he grabs Wario off of his motorcycle and kicks him away. But in a pretty funny touch, Cloud then picks up the motorcycle and carries it off. I guess Cloud was missing his motorcycle from Final Fantasy VII. It's then that we finally get a look at his other specials. The first is the Blade Beam Limit Break, which is either his neutral or down special. But we'd bet our gold chocobo that it's his neutral, since that's what most long-range specials are mapped to. The Blade Beam can also be used in mid-air, where it continues at the same height. However, it seems to have a pretty limited range as it soon dissipates after hitting Bowser. We don't think the attack immediately stops when it hits someone either, as it continues past the point of the initial strike. And this makes sense since the Blade Beam would split apart to hit the other enemies when used in Final Fantasy VII. The next move is the Cross Slash Limit Break, which we believe will be the down special. And because it's a very fast series of attacks, we can see that it triggers Ryu's focus attack and then quickly strikes again to stop his punch from getting through, and then finishing him with the rest of the attacks. Of course, it's just as effective in midair as well. Finally, his up special is the Clim Hazard Limit Break. As we can see with Captain Falcon, Cloud first thrusts the Buster Sword forward, which interrupts the Falcon dive before sending him skyward. Interestingly, Cloud comes back down immediately, almost like Kirby's Final Cutter, but it's more like Shulk's up special. As we see later, Cloud doesn't always perform another strike straight down, so we believe that it must be inputted again in order to perform the downward Clim Hazard. It's then that the most mysterious element of Cloud's moveset occurs. His limit break gauge completely fills up. It even has the same text box from Final Fantasy VII. But how is the limit break gauge activated? Could it be that Braver might just be one of his normal attacks since it's the only one we don't see powered up from the gauge? We don't think so because we're pretty sure we've accounted for all of his moves. So is this ability something like Little Mac's Power Meter where it charges over time as Cloud is damaged? It would fit with how the limit break gauge is filled in Final Fantasy VII. Does that mean the Braver input is used to activate the gauge? Or could it be Blade Beam since we believe that to be the neutral special? That is usually the button used to activate special abilities like this. It could also just happen automatically, as that is what occurs in Final Fantasy VII. The only way to preserve the limit break is to use magic or another ability. However, since Cloud doesn't have access to anything like that, it would make sense to just automatically power up whatever Cloud does next. We can't really see him having to charge it like Donkey Kong's Giant Punch, or time it like the Wii Fit trainer's Deep Breathing. And our theory that it automatically powers up whatever attack is used next seems to be vindicated by the footage. We see that naturally the specials become more potent. The Cross Slash is larger and even more powerful, the Blade Beam creates a multi-hit strike when it connects, and the Clim Hazard goes even higher. But the limit break gauge also seems to influence Cloud's smash attacks. It extends the reach of his up smash to not only hit Roy in front of him, but Link behind him. And the animation even ends in the same way that we saw before, despite this extra hit. The aura surrounding Cloud may even be a small reference to the Meteor Rain limit break since it has the same startup. Perhaps one of his other smash attacks, like the side smash, could reference the only other limit we don't see in the trailer, the finishing touch. Of course, it's only appropriate that his most powerful limit break would be his final smash. The trailer even goes so far as to try to recreate Cloud's showdown with Sephiroth by having Ike stand in for the villain. There are the same flashes from Final Fantasy, though they're just an edit for the trailer. However, the final smash itself has a long wind-up as Cloud charges it and the Omnislash text from the game appears above Cloud's head. He then charges forward, and if the first hit is successful, the rest of the final smash plays out. The structure of the final smash is like a combination of the dash forward from Marth's critical hit and the series of strikes from Ike's Great Ether. However, those strikes are uniquely Cloud's as the moves are taken directly from the game. But even if Cloud only catches one person in his final smash, the explosion at the end will likely damage everyone if it takes place on a small stage like we see here. Phew, that's everything about Cloud, but he comes with a new stage, Midgar. Right away we can see the Shinra building in the background along with the Mako reactors. There's no sign of the sister ray though, so it's set during the beginning of the game. Oddly, the stage itself has a gas pump and a small shack in the background. We couldn't find any specific reference to those structures, but do wonder if they could generally represent the feeling of Midgar's Sector 7. The most unique element of the stage by far, though, is the presence of the summons as hazards. We first see a red ball of light that signifies the coming of the summons, since summon materia is red. This is simply an element of the stage though, despite the trailer being edited in such a way to make it look like Cloud is bursting from the materia before summoning the creatures. In reality, he's using the taunt that mimics his magic animation, while the red materia bursts and shows the summon symbols. There are even 5 in total, 1 for each summon. 2 reds, a yellow, a white, and a green. The first summon we see is Odin, who uses Zantetsuken to split the stage in 2, which is simply an awesome effect, if only for the details. For example, if you're in the center when that happens, you'll be struck and instantly KO'd, just like in Final Fantasy. Other details include showing the left side slowly lowering, splitting apart in a shower of sparks, and then evening out. Besides the sparks, it's exactly how enemies are cut when hit by Odin in Final Fantasy VII. Next up is Leviathan, who uses its tidal wave to flood Midgar in the background and create so much water that it affects the stage. While players can no longer be KO'd from the bottom, the rush of water can sweep players away. However, it seems like the only dangerous side is the left. Being caught on the right side of the water rush seems to just push you back to the stage. Could it push you underneath and to the other side? Or will the current shift so the water flows to the right at certain points, making it somewhat unpredictable? We have a feeling it'll be the latter. Rama, or Ramu, nobody really seems to be able to agree on his pronunciation, uses his Judgment Bolt on the stage. It doesn't affect the stage itself, but rather electrifies the floating platforms. It looks like the damage is built up over time before blasting the character away. Meanwhile, Ifrit uses his classic Hellfire attack to engulf one side of the stage in so much fire that it tilts the whole thing. The initial fire burst seems to have blasted Cloud to the left, as you can see his smoking body heading back to the stage, though we can't imagine he'll be able to grab it. Ifrit's like a natural edge guard. Finally, there's Bahamut Zero, who appears in the background and sends his Terra Flare all the way across Midgar as it quickly travels to the stage. But there's an indication of where it will hit thanks to a red marker. It's actually very similar to the indicators on the Halberd stage, but this attack looks absolutely devastating as the entire stage shakes from the blast. Cloud is totally fine though since he's outside of the indicator. Pit and Lucas? Not so much. Before we move on though, we have to point out the nice touch of using the summons designs specifically from Final Fantasy VII, as they do have slight redesigns and differences in each game. Okay, we're almost done here, but there are still a few references to Final Fantasy VII that are well worth highlighting. The most obvious one is from the beginning of the trailer, which mimics the opening of Final Fantasy VII, right down to the music. But there are others that are a bit more subtle. For example, did you notice that the background of Cloud's announcement screen is a callback to the posters of Advent Children? The little cell-like squares look exactly the same and are meant to be a reference to the Genova cells in Cloud's body. Then there's the moment soon after where Cloud faces off against Kirby, Samus, and Charizard. It has the same traditional battle transition animation occur, and the other characters are placed in a lineup just like in those battles. Cloud's on one side, while they're on the other. The next reference is a bit cuter as Cloud sleeps next to a crouching Zelda. Between the blooming Pikmin in the background and the lipstick in Zelda's hand acting as a flower, it's a fun recreation of the church scene between Cloud and Aerith. This reference, though, is way more obscure. At first, it just seems like Cloud's dizzy animation with his hand to his forehead, like the many times he has painful flashbacks and memories in the game. But instead, this is a clever callback to the fact that Cloud gets seasick. It's an incredibly minor detail, but we love Sakurai for making it. Finally, the victory fanfare is slightly different from the original game, so it's likely a remix for Cloud's victory scream. Cloud and the Midgar stage aren't the only DLC coming to Super Smash Bros. Though. We've already seen one of the new Mii costumes coming, the Chocobo hats. There are a ton of possibilities for Final Fantasy Mii costumes, from classic characters to special outfits that match the classic Moogle, Black Mage, and White Mage. We can't wait to see what they come up with. But for now, that's everything we could find in Cloud's reveal trailer. Like the other characters, his moveset seems to be perfectly representative of what he could do in his original game. It's a completely surprising addition that we can't wait to try for ourselves. Of course, let us know if we missed anything in the comments. If you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at GameXplain to keep up with everything we do. Thanks for watching, and make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Super Smash Bros. And other things gaming.